You have been nothing but a disappointment as a father. Everything wrong in my life traces back to you. If you had done your job right, I would already be living like a real man." Those words came from my son, 28 years old, grown in body but still speaking like an angry teenager. His voice dripped with spite, each syllable meant to cut deep. And yet, instead of breaking me, it left me with a strange chill inside, a cold, steady feeling that made the edges of the world seem sharper. "I am sorry you feel that way," I said quietly, my voice low enough to barely carry across the room, before turning my shoulders and walking away. Down that hallway, I understood something I'd been avoiding for years. Respect is not always learned through kindness. Sometimes it has to be forced, even if the lesson leaves you bleeding inside. And I knew, from that moment on, I was done avoiding it. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through a mess of receipts that looked more like exhibits in a trial than anything to do with my life. Gas station stops I did not remember, dinners at restaurants I had never been to, a pair of expensive sneakers I certainly had not bought for myself. Every charge tied back to my credit card, every signature in Tyler's hand. The sharp scent of something burning pulled me out of my thoughts. I spun toward the stove, scraping eggs off the pan just in time to keep them from turning black. It was all part of the routine now. Scrambled eggs with cheese melted exactly the way Tyler liked, bacon sizzling in the background, coffee dripping into the pot. A quiet choreography I had been performing every morning for the past 8 months, ever since he had come back home. "I lost my job," he had told me that night, standing in the doorway with 2 overstuffed suitcases and that same half-embarrassed grin he had as a kid. "Just need a couple of weeks to get back on my feet, Dad." That was 238 days ago. But I was not keeping score. I placed his plate on the same stretch of counter where I had once left his weekly allowance, where I had set down his college acceptance letter, where I had signed his first car loan when his credit fell short. That counter had become a kind of timeline for every sacrifice I had made to push his life forward. Tyler came shuffling down the stairs wearing the designer pajamas I had bought for him just last month. Because, as he put it, "I can't wear cheap clothes, Dad. What if someone sees me?" His hair was a mess, his eyes half closed from too little sleep, and, I suspected, too much drinking the night before. I figured my next credit card bill would spell out the details. "Morning," I said, pouring him a glass of orange juice, freshly squeezed, the only kind he would drink. He gave a half grunt, barely looking up from his phone. Always the phone. The same one I still paid for on the family plan, the same one that never seemed to get alerts from job boards, but somehow lit up whenever his friends made plans. "Dad, we need to talk." His tone was familiar, the one that came right before he asked for something. I felt my shoulders tighten without even thinking about it. Months of conditioning had trained me to brace myself before he finished the sentence. "The guys and I are thinking about going to Vegas next weekend. Just to relax a little, you know? Job hunting has been wearing me out." Job hunting. My eyes flicked to the untouched stack of applications I had printed for him weeks ago, still sitting on the hallway table like they had grown roots there. "Tyler, we have already discussed this. You said you were going to concentrate on finding a job. God, you really do not get it, do you?" His whole demeanor changed in an instant. The sleepy young man disappeared, replaced by something sharper, colder. "I am not some nobody who is going to flip burgers at McDonald's. I have standards. I have potential. But you just want to drag me down here with you." That was the moment he said it, the line that would replay in my head for days. And as I stood there, his breakfast untouched and cooling on the counter, it hit me that we were not talking about a weekend in Vegas at all. We were talking about the man I had allowed my son to become. "What exactly do you mean by saying I am holding you back?" My voice came out lower than I intended, but there was a weight behind it, a warning carried in the tone of a father whose patience was finally running out. Tyler put his phone down with that deliberate slowness he always used when trying to make a point. "You really want the truth? All right, look around you." His hands swept across the kitchen, the very kitchen I had torn apart and rebuilt 3 years earlier. installing the granite counters and stainless steel appliances I had worked so hard to afford. This is your ceiling, Dad. This small, suburban, going nowhere life. But me? I am destined for something bigger. The word small clung to the air like smoke that would not clear. I worked 60-hour weeks for this so-called small life, I said, my voice still even. I took on double shifts so you could go to that private college. Oh, here it comes, he interrupted with a roll of his eyes, a move so familiar I could picture him doing it at 15. The guilt speech. I gave up everything for you, Tyler. Maybe I never asked you to do any of it. In my mind, I saw that tuition bill, $180,000 over 4 years. I remembered the second mortgage I signed, the vacations I canceled, the old car I drove while he had a newer Honda. I remembered the pride swelling in my chest when he crossed the graduation stage, thinking every sacrifice had been worth it. You are right, I said, catching him off guard. You never asked, but a father does not wait to be asked. He builds a future for his children because that is his job. Future? He gave a short, cold laugh. Is that what you call it? You think paying for things gives you some claim over me? You think I should be grateful for living under your shadow? My shadow. I stared at him, this man who carried my blood, and searched for the boy who used to spend Sunday mornings building Lego castles beside me, the boy who would run into my arms after a nightmare, trusting I could make anything right again. No, Tyler, I never wanted you in my shadow. I wanted to give you a starting place so you could create something of your own. Starting place? His voice sharpened. This is not a foundation, it is a trap. Every day I am here, I sink deeper into it. His hand flicked toward the kitchen, toward me, dismissing it all in a single gesture. Then his face changed. Something mean and calculated flickered there, like he had been keeping one last blade hidden just for this moment. You want the truth? The real truth? I nodded, though every part of me told me not to. You are a worthless father. Every failure in my life is your fault. If it were not for you, I would already be living like a real man. It was like being struck in the chest. But worse than the words was the look in his eyes. The grim satisfaction of someone who had been waiting a long time to deliver the final blow. I stood frozen for a beat, and then that coldness returned, the kind that made the edges of the world sharp. The granite counters I had saved for, the carefully chosen appliances, the breakfast I had cooked, all of it suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else's life. I am sorry you feel that way, I said quietly, turning away. I walked to the front door and took my keys from the hook, the same hook where his car keys hung for the car I was still paying off. Behind me, his voice changed tone, almost uncertain now, as if he sensed something had shifted. Dad, where are you going? We still need to talk about Vegas. I closed the door softly. Some discussions, I realized, are already over before anyone admits it. I stayed in my car far longer than I meant to, staring blankly through the windshield as if the world outside had nothing to offer me. My fingers wouldn't stop trembling. Ralph's grocery store parking lot had become my hideout, a quiet stretch of asphalt where I could let my guard down without Tyler seeing me crack, without having to fake composure. Worthless father. That phrase sat deep inside me like a stone pressing against my ribs, each thud of my heartbeat making it heavier. I kept replaying the scene in my mind, hoping I'd spot a flicker of regret in his eyes, some indication I'd heard wrong. But there had been no mistake, only that cold, satisfied smirk that told me he'd meant every single word. I needed something to ground myself. Coffee. Hot, bitter, something strong enough to scrape the taste of humiliation off my tongue. Inside, the store's bright fluorescent lights made everything look drained of color, almost unreal. I moved down the aisles like a shadow until a sound snapped me back to the present, a sound I hadn't heard in years but knew instantly. I want the robot. I want it now. A boy, maybe 6, was in the middle of a full-blown tantrum in the toy aisle. His father stood nearby, calm and unmoved, while the kid kicked and screamed like his world was falling apart. I know you want it, buddy, the man said in a steady, measured tone. But we came here for groceries, and remember the rule, no toys unless it's your birthday or Christmas. But I need it, please. I'll be good forever. The father didn't waver. No promises, no bargaining, just silence until the storm burned itself out. Then he took the boy's hand, and they walked away together. A minute later, the meltdown was already behind them. I stood frozen, watching them disappear around the corner, and my mind filled with another boy, Tyler at 5 years old, hugging a brand new toy truck like it was treasure. Thank you, Daddy. You're the best daddy in the whole universe. His little face glowing with joy, kissing my cheek, telling every kid at the park about the father who bought him everything. I had chased that feeling for years. I looked for excuses to recreate it. Good report cards, a clean room, sometimes no reason at all. His gratitude was my scoreboard, proof that I was winning at this fatherhood thing. My own dad had been a different breed. Military rules, punishments that stuck, lessons delivered without sugarcoating. The world doesn't owe you a damn thing, boy. You earn it or you go without. I'd hated him for it. Swore I would never treat my son like that. I told myself Tyler would grow up with the things I'd been denied: patience, kindness, generosity without conditions. And yet, here I was. I'd raised a 28-year-old man who could look me in the eye and call me worthless. I bought my coffee and sat heavily at one of those flimsy plastic tables near the deli. For months, I'd been asking the wrong thing. How can I help Tyler? What does he need from me? The real question was harder, sharper. What was I finally going to stop giving him? The first spark of action came from inside my own home. I had just gotten back from the grocery store, still mulling over the decision I knew I had to make, when I heard voices drifting down from upstairs. Tyler's voice, and a woman's laugh, one I didn't recognize. I went up the stairs slowly, the way I used to when he was a teenager, sneaking late-night phone calls after lights out. But this wasn't teenage rebellion. This was my 28-year-old son living under my roof, on the phone I paid for, talking about me. Yeah, he's completely pathetic, Tyler said, his voice clear through the half-open door. Sometimes I almost feel bad for him. He's so desperate for my approval, it's actually kind of sad. The woman on the other end laughed. That's awful, babe, but maybe a little sweet? I mean, at least he cares. Sweet? No, it's embarrassing. He keeps trying to bond with me, like making me breakfast every morning, paying for everything, thinking that's what love is. Honestly, it's pathetic. I pressed my back against the hallway wall, and something in me went cold and hollow. My dad was like that after the divorce, the woman said. Always trying to buy my love. Exactly. And the worst part is, he actually thinks I'm grateful. He believes that just because he sacrifices his entire sad little life for me, I should be in awe of him. But really, it just makes me respect him less. There was a pause before she asked, "So what's your plan?" "I don't know. Keep letting him cover everything until I figure out my life. I mean, he wants to feel needed, right? And I need the cash. Works out for both of us." "You're using your own father," she said, but she was laughing when she said it. "He's using me too. He needs me for validation, for purpose. Honestly, without me, he'd have nothing to live for." The words hit harder than any insult he'd ever thrown at me. I'd suspected he was taking advantage of me for months, but hearing him break me down into a pitiful caricature, a sad old man whose only purpose was being his father, was like being punched in the chest. And the truth that stung the most, he wasn't completely wrong. That was when I realized I was already standing in his doorway, my voice cutting through the air before I'd even thought about it. Well, this has been enlightening. Tyler spun around so fast his phone slipped from his hand, his face drained of color. "Dad, how long were you?" "Long enough." I stepped fully into the room, his room, in my house, furnished with my money, covered in posters I'd paid for. Don't hang up on your friend. She might want to hear this next part. "Dad, wait, I was just telling her how pathetic I am, how you're milking me for money while pretending to pity me, how my whole identity revolves around keeping you afloat." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "Here's the thing, Tyler," I said, picking his phone up from the floor. The line was still open. "She's right about one thing. I was using you. For meaning. For purpose. But that ends today." I tapped the screen, ending the call, and set the phone down on his dresser. "You want to see what I look like when I stop being pathetic?" The look in his eyes told me he finally understood. Something was about to change, and not in his favor. The fear I'd seen in Tyler's eyes the night before had a short shelf life, 12 hours, give or take. By morning, he had pulled himself together, smoothed over the cracks, and rolled out what I'd finally come to recognize as his most reliable weapon, emotional manipulation disguised as righteous outrage. Dad, we need to talk. He cornered me in the kitchen, his tone thick with manufactured hurt. The performance was so familiar I could have timed the beats. His voice pitched just low enough to sound vulnerable, the way he stood half-turned like someone expecting sympathy. I kept my attention on the toast in front of me, spreading butter slowly, letting the silence stretch. I could see it getting to him. His fingers started drumming against the countertop, a nervous habit from childhood that once made me want to comfort him. Now, I recognized it for what it was, a tactic. What you did yesterday, he began, listening in on my private conversation, that's a major violation of my privacy. Privacy? My voice was flat, measured. In my house? I caught the quick flicker in his expression, that tiny recoil he couldn't hide. Yes, privacy. I'm an adult, and you can't just spy on me like I'm some criminal. He had switched into his reasonable voice, the one he used to soften me up, to get me to second-guess my own boundaries. Look, I know you're upset about what you overheard, but you completely took it out of context. A thin, cold amusement settled in my gut. Oh, I'd love to hear the context where calling your father pathetic and bragging about using him for money somehow sounds reasonable. His cheeks flushed, not from shame, but from the irritation of being trapped. The mask was slipping. I was venting. Okay? Everyone vents about their parents. It doesn't mean anything. You're being incredibly manipulative right now, throwing my private words back at me. The irony almost made me laugh. He'd called me manipulative. The truth was, I had been, but mostly toward myself, convincing myself that giving him everything was helping him grow. You know what, Tyler? You're right. I have been manipulative toward me. That ends today. What's that supposed to mean? There it was, the first fracture in his voice, the uncertainty he couldn't fake away. I pulled my phone from my pocket, turning the screen toward him. A real estate website glowed back, listings for studio apartments downtown. These are in your price range. Well, the price range of someone with your standards. The blood drained from his face. His hand twitched toward the phone, like grabbing it could erase what I'd just shown him. You're kicking me out? I'm giving you exactly what you said you wanted. Freedom. A chance to live like a real man. Your words, not mine. His mouth worked for a moment before sound returned. Dad, you can't be serious. Where am I supposed to get rent money? I don't have a job. That, I said, is a you problem. For once, he had no comeback. He just stared, mouth opening and closing without a single word. The sight was satisfying. This is insane. You're having some kind of breakdown. Mom's going to hear about this. I scrolled to a number I hadn't dialed in months and pressed call. Megan picked up on the third ring. Hi, Megan. Tyler wants to talk to you about his housing situation. I held out the phone, watching the panic flicker in his eyes. Go ahead. Tell her all about your pathetic father. But then something shifted in his face. The tricks weren't landing. The hooks weren't sinking in. And for the first time since he'd moved back, he looked at me like I wasn't the same man he thought he could control. I set the phone down on the counter. Keep it. You'll need it for apartment hunting. Oh, and that girlfriend you were on the phone with yesterday? Might be a good idea to call her. I have a feeling you're going to need a couch to sleep on. Grabbing my keys from the hook, I headed for the door. Where are you going? To see a lawyer, I said. Turns out there are legal ways to help adult children who refuse to help themselves. The drive into the city felt nothing like the drives I'd taken for years. My hands stayed steady on the wheel, my breathing even. I wasn't racing to clean up someone else's mess or wondering if I'd just said the wrong thing. This time, I was headed towards something I wanted to do, not something I felt cornered into doing. That conversation I'd overheard kept replaying in my head. Not the sting of it that had faded, but the precision in his cruelty. He thinks because he sacrifices his whole sad little life for me, I should worship him. At first it had cut deep. Now it fed a colder, more deliberate kind of anger. The kind that gets things done. He'd wanted to see me stop being pathetic. Fine. He was about to get a first-hand look. Jonathan Wu's office sat high in a downtown tower, glass walls reflecting the morning sun. Inside, the reception area smelled faintly of leather and coffee. The receptionist, a woman in her 40s with a calm smile, offered me a real cup of coffee while I waited, None of that instant powder I'd been drinking at home while trimming my budget to fund Tyler's lifestyle. Mr. Wu will see you now, she said, leading me past framed degrees and awards into a corner office with a sweeping view of the skyline. A heavy mahogany desk, shelves of law books that actually looked used, leather chairs that probably cost more than a month of my mortgage. Jonathan rose to greet me, shorter than I remembered, with gray at his temples and understated but expensive glasses. His handshake was solid, his eyes sharp, and for the first time in a while, I saw respect reflected back at me. You sounded different on the phone, he said, settling in. Focused. What's going on? So I told him. The 8 months of financial support that had slid it to pure exploitation, the endless demands, the overheard call where my own son labeled me pathetic and bragged about using me. As I spoke, his expression tightened, the professional mask giving way to something more personal. Jesus, he muttered, taking off his glasses to wipe them with a little too much force. How long's this been going on? The living arrangement? 8 months. But if I'm honest, I've been enabling him for years. I just kept telling myself it was support. Saying it out loud felt like digging out a splinter that had been lodged under the skin for far too long. Jonathan put his glasses back on, studying me. You're not here to fix the relationship. You're here to end it. That's right. Not wrong, he said, leaning forward. Overdue. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is let them live with the consequences they've worked so hard to avoid. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a folder. Formal eviction. 30-day notice. You're not legally required to house an adult child, especially one who's abusing your generosity. I asked him how it worked. Certified mail or in-person delivery with a witness. After 30 days, if Tyler didn't leave, I could get a court order. Are you ready for the fallout? He asked. I thought of Tyler's face when I'd caught him mid-lie. The way he'd instantly tried to flip the story and make himself the victim. Jonathan, do you have kids? 2. If your son called you worthless and laughed about using you to impress a woman, what would you do? He didn't hesitate. I'd want to throw him off a bridge. I'm just throwing him out of my house. Then let's do this, he said, sliding the papers across the desk. But once you sign, you can't undo it. Good. I took the heavy pen, signed, and felt something click into place. Right then, my phone buzzed. A text from Tyler. Dad, I'm really sorry. I was stressed. I didn't mean it. Can we talk? Jonathan glanced at it and smirked. Funny how sorry people get when they see the consequences coming. I'll give him 30 days, I said. We'll see what he does with them. The drive back was quieter inside me than the one there. The manila envelope on the passenger seat felt heavier than paper. It felt like a turning point. For 28 years, I'd avoided disappointing Tyler. Now I was almost looking forward to it. Through the front window, I saw him pacing with his phone, gesturing wildly, running his hand through his hair. Crisis mode, probably rallying allies. I stood in the doorway for a moment before stepping inside. Dad, he said quickly, putting on a tone of urgent remorse. I've been thinking. I owe you a huge apology. I set my keys on the table, pulled the envelope from my jacket, and placed it between us. This is for you. He opened it with a trembling hand, eyes scanning the page until the meaning hit him. This is an eviction notice? 30 days. You can't do this. I'm your son. For 28 years, I've been your father. Somewhere along the way, I turned into your bank account. That ends now. His phone rang. I nodded toward it. Answer it. You're going to need the help. The quiet between us was the kind that had weight, as if sound itself refused to cross the space. The eviction papers lay scattered where they'd fallen, his eyes flickering from disbelief to anger, then to panic before looping back again. It was like watching an old slot machine spin endlessly without hitting a match. You can't do this, he finally whispered, the words trembling on their way out. I have nowhere to go. You've got 30 days to figure that out. Dad, please. Gone was the easy charm, the manufactured sincerity. This was the stripped-down version, panicked, selfish, and bare. I'll get a job. I'll pay you back every cent. I'll change. For half a second, the old instinct flared, wanting to believe him, wanting to rescue him. But then I remembered his voice when he called me pathetic, and the cold precision with which he'd explained me away to his girlfriend. You've had 8 months to change, Tyler, I said quietly. 28 years to grow into someone who didn't need this conversation. His phone rang. He picked it up immediately. Mom? Yeah, it's real. He gave me actual legal papers. No, I don't think talking to him will work. He's lost his mind. I stood, brushing imaginary dust from my pants. When I come back, pick those papers up off my floor. Where are you going? To live my life. I drove with no destination in mind, letting the motion be the point. Buildings and streetlights slipped by, detached from me like I was watching someone else's film. I couldn't remember the last time I'd driven without an errand for him. No groceries, no bills, no crisis to solve. An hour later, I was pulling into the valet lane of a boutique hotel I'd never noticed before. Stone facade, uniform doorman, polished brass handles. Inside, the air carried the faint scent of citrus and leather. I'd like one of your best rooms for the weekend, I told the desk clerk, a young woman with a trained but genuine smile. Of course, sir. Cash or card? Card. I slid across my personal credit card. My account, not the one tied to Tyler, the one I'd been too cautious to touch because I was saving for his needs. And give me a list of spa services, room service menus, anything that helps a man remember how to enjoy his own money. The 14th floor room looked out over the city skyline. Real Egyptian cotton on the bed, marble in the bathroom, a mini bar full of overpriced indulgences I'd never tried. I stood at the window, watching the light change as the sun dropped, then picked up the phone and called my bank. I need to report fraudulent activity on my accounts, I said. Multiple charges I didn't authorize. By the time I hung up, the cards were canceled, the bank accounts frozen, the family phone plan gone. Every line that had been tying my money to his lifestyle was severed with a few keystrokes and my social security number. That evening, my personal phone, the one he didn't even know I owned, started ringing. I'd bought it months earlier, telling myself it was for emergencies, though maybe it had always been my first step toward independence. It was Tyler. I let it go to voicemail. He tried again at 9, at 10, at 11. I ordered steak, wine, and dessert from room service I didn't need but wanted, and played the messages while I ate. First came confusion. Dad, my card isn't working. Can you call the bank? Then disbelief. They said you canceled everything. That can't be right. Call me back. Then panic. I can't buy gas. I can't buy food. What am I supposed to do? By the fourth message, fear had curdled into accusation. What kind of father does this? You're sick. The fifth was almost a sneer. Fine, I'll go to Mom. She wouldn't be this cruel. I deleted them all without replying and ordered another bottle of wine. Saturday morning brought more messages, frantic and repetitive. I listened to them over breakfast in bed. Fresh squeezed juice, eggs Benedict that cost more than my weekly grocery bill, and felt no more than mild curiosity about this man who shared my blood but couldn't grasp the concept of consequence. The rest of the day, I wandered through parts of the city I'd never bothered with before. I bought a book from a small bookstore, got a $5 coffee that was worth every cent, tried on a shirt and bought it because it fit, not because it was cheap or good enough. At some point, I realized I couldn't remember when I'd last spent money purely on myself, or when my life had stopped being mine and started revolving entirely around someone else's comfort. Saturday night found me at the hotel bar, nursing a glass of scotch that cost more than Tyler's weekly allowance and working my way through a new book. When Megan's name lit up my phone, it pulled a chain of memories behind it. Some bitter, some unexpectedly warm. Megan at 25, laughing over dinner. Megan in the hospital holding newborn Tyler, whispering, he's perfect. Megan 12 years later, suitcase in hand, voice cold and efficient, as she explained why our marriage was over. I almost let it ring out. Almost. Hello, Megan. What the hell is wrong with you? Straight to the jugular. No pleasantries, no warm-up. It was such a classic Megan move that I nearly smiled. She had always favored blunt impact over subtle digs, one of the traits I used to admire back when I mistook confrontation for passion. I'm fine, thanks for asking. How are you? I kept my tone deliberately even and took a slow sip. The burn felt clean, sharp, so different from the slow corrosion of years of quiet resentment. Don't play games. Tyler called me in tears, said you threw him out, actually served him with legal papers. In my mind, I could see her pacing. She always paced when she was angry, probably wearing those faded college slippers she kept for comfort. I gave him 30 days, I said. 30 days? He's your son. He doesn't have a job. He doesn't have money. He had 8 months to get a job. He decided not to. He's been trying. Megan. I set my glass down, feeling that old wave of frustration I'd lived with for 15 years of marriage. When was the last time he told you about an interview? An application? One concrete step toward employment? Silence. I could almost hear her digging through her memory, coming up empty. He's been networking, building connections. Networking? I let out a short laugh. You mean drinking with the same people who don't work either? Spending my money, griping about how the job market doesn't match his standards? You don't understand what it's like out there. I've been in the workforce for 30 years while supporting 2 households, I said, sharper than I'd planned. What I don't understand is why a college graduate thinks he's above pulling shifts at Starbucks. He has a degree. He shouldn't have to. Megan, what was your first job? What does that have to do with? Humor me. I worked at a clothing store in the mall, but that was different. How? The economy was better. More opportunities. Bullshit. The words slipped out, and I didn't bother to take it back. You worked there because you needed money and you weren't too proud to earn it. So when did we decide Tyler was too good for honest work? He's not too good. He's just what? Too special? Too well educated? Too entitled to start where the rest of us did? Her breathing quickened. I recognized the sound, her tells when she was running out of argument but not ready to admit it. He told me about what he said to you, she said at last, quieter now. About calling you a worthless father. He feels awful. Does he? Of course, he was upset, venting. Megan, he wasn't venting to me. He was talking to his girlfriend. About me. Laughing about how pathetic I am while I was downstairs cooking his breakfast. You were eavesdropping. I was walking past his door, in my house, and I heard our son explaining how he plays on my need to be needed so he can fund his lifestyle. The words came out steady, but each felt like tearing out a splinter. He didn't call me pathetic in anger. He said it like he was describing a specimen under glass. The pause on the line was thick with years of denial and damage neither of us had wanted to see. Maybe he didn't mean it that way, she said at last, her voice smaller. He meant every word. And the worst part? He wasn't completely wrong. Don't say that. I've been pathetic, Megan. I've been so afraid of losing his approval, so unwilling to be the bad guy, that I've bankrolled his refusal to grow up. I dressed it up as love, but all it was enabling. You were being a good father. Was I? Because the end result of my so-called good fathering is a 28-year-old man who thinks the world owes him a living and calls the person keeping a roof over his head worthless the moment he doesn't get his way. I heard her start to cry, soft, muffled. Those tears had been my undoing for almost 3 decades. 15 years of marriage and another 12 of divorce, and they'd still been the thing that made me fold, apologize, give ground just to keep the peace. Not tonight. Megan, I want you to think about something. Really think about it before you answer. What? Her voice was thick, tight with emotion. When's the last time Tyler asked you about your life? Not a disguised lead into a request. Not a complaint about his own situation. Just a genuine question about how you're doing. The pause stretched. We don't talk about me much. I'm the parent. He's the child. He's 28 years old, Megan. Age doesn't matter in family. It matters when it's about basic human decency. When's the last time he remembered your birthday without a reminder? Called just to check in? Offered to help you with anything without you asking? Each question landed like a hammer. I could hear her breathing change, the air thick with a recognition she didn't want to face. He's going through a hard time. He's been in a hard time for 10 years. At what point does it stop being bad luck and start being selfishness? At what point does it become using people's love as currency? You're being cruel. I'm being honest. For the first time in his adult life, I'm telling the truth about who our son has turned into. He's not a bad person, isn't he? Describe Tyler to me. Not the version you're hoping for, not the boy he was at 12. Tell me about the man he is right now. He's struggling. That's not a description, it's an excuse. How does he spend his days? How does he treat the people who actually care about him? What does he give back to the world? The silence that followed was deafening. He's my son, she whispered at last. He's my son too, and that's exactly why I'm doing this. By abandoning him, by refusing to enable him anymore, by making him stand inside the consequences he spent years dodging. What if he can't handle it? What if he can't handle it? What if something happens to him? That landed a parent's nightmare, stripped of drama, just fear in its purest form. Then he learns to handle it, I said, or he doesn't, and that's his choice. His choice? He's your child. He's an adult who's been making his own choices for years. The choice not to work, the choice to live off other people, the choice to treat the people who love him like hired help. My voice was calm now, settled. I can't make better choices for him, but I can stop cushioning him from the fallout. This isn't protection. It's abandonment. No. Protection was paying his bills while he called me pathetic. Protection was making him breakfast while he mocked me to his girlfriend. Protection was enabling his selfishness and pretending it was love. I stood, leaving money on the bar. What I'm doing now is parenting. 2 decades too late, but parenting all the same. The man I married would never have done this. The words hung like a challenge. For a moment, the old reflex stirred, the one that whispered I was too harsh, too demanding, too much. But then I remembered his laugh, the months of being treated like a bank account with hands, the casual cruelty of hearing my own son call me worthless. You're right, I said at last. The man you married would have kept enabling him until one of us was dead. He'd have kept paying for his lifestyle, kept apologizing for existing, and kept wondering why his son had no respect for him. That's not. That's exactly what happened, Megan. You didn't leave because we weren't happy. You left because I didn't know how to demand respect from you, from Tyler, from anyone. I thought love meant giving people whatever they wanted, even when it was rotting them from the inside out. I left because you never fought for anything. Exactly. I never fought because I was terrified of conflict. I was afraid that if I demanded respect, I'd lose the scraps of affection I was getting. The truth hit me even as I said it. But you can't truly love someone you don't respect, can you, Megan? That's why you left. Not because I was a bad husband, because I was a weak one. Her breath caught, sharp and uneven. I never said you were weak. You did not have to say it out loud, Megan. You showed it. Every single time you rolled your eyes when I tried to set limits. Every time you undercut me in front of Tyler. Every time you decided his comfort mattered more than my authority as his father. I was protecting him. From what? From learning that choices have consequences? From realizing respect is something you earn? From finding out no one else is responsible for his happiness? From being hurt. And look how well that worked out. We padded every corner of his life. We softened every blow, blocked every small failure, kept him from even the tiniest sting of real life. And now, here we are, with a grown man who expects the world to serve him and calls his father worthless the moment reality gets in his way. The silence on the line dragged out so long I thought she had hung up. I do not know how to fix this, she said at last, voice thin. You cannot fix it, neither can I. The only person who can change Tyler is Tyler, and he is never going to do that if we keep swooping in to save him. But what if? What if he has to flip burgers to pay rent? Share a rundown apartment with strangers, wash his own clothes, cook his own meals, learn how to get through life without a safety net? Yes. What if all of that happens? Then maybe, just maybe, he'll finally learn what being a man actually means. Another long pause. You honestly think he's capable of that? For the first time that night, there was something in her voice that wasn't anger or tears. It sounded suspiciously like hope. I think he's capable of a lot more than we've ever expected of him, but he'll never prove it while we're treating him like a helpless child. And if he falls flat, if he can't make it, then he fails, and that's his right as a grown man. Her tears came again, but they sounded different this time. Not the weaponized crying I knew too well, but the quiet grief of someone who's finally seeing a truth they wish they could unsee. When did we lose our way? She asked. When we decided our job was to keep him happy instead of making him strong. I just wanted him to have all the things we never had. I know, but in chasing that, we forgot the most important part. That struggle builds grit, that disappointment teaches resilience, and that earning something makes it mean more than getting it for free. So what happens now? Now Tyler learns what every other adult learns. No one owes you a comfortable life just for existing. And what about us? There hasn't been an us for 12 years, Megan, but maybe someday we'll both be able to look at our son and feel proud instead of scrambling to defend his behavior. You've changed, she said finally. Yes, I have. I'm not sure I like this version of you. That's fine. I like him just fine. I ended the call and switched the phone off. The quiet afterward felt cleaner than anything I'd heard in years. By Sunday morning, I'd extended my hotel stay, first by a day, then another, and another. By midweek, I'd been there 5 nights, living off room service and the kind of solitude that doesn't feel lonely. When I finally went home, the air inside the house felt different, lighter. The counters were bare. The living room was free of his things. No plates left out, no chargers tangled on the table, none of the clutter that comes from someone who assumes their mess is someone else's problem. On the coffee table sat a folded sheet of hotel stationery. I knew it instantly. It was from the same hotel I'd just left. Looks like he'd been staying there too until my credit card had been shut off. Dad, I'm at the Marriott downtown until I figure things out. I've been thinking a lot and I realize I was wrong. About everything. I want to fix this, but I can't do it without your help. Please call me. I love you. Tyler. I read it twice. Waiting for the hook, the angle, the well-placed guilt trip. But all I saw was the handwriting of a young man finally coming face to face with the cost of his own choices. I slipped the note into my pocket, sat at my desk, and opened my laptop. A one-way ticket to Scotland blinked on my screen before I knew it. The Highlands. A trip I'd dreamed about for years, but always told myself I couldn't afford. Not with Tyler's needs, not with another crisis looming. Now there was no excuse. The ticket was non-refundable. I'd be gone 3 weeks, and in those 3 weeks, Tyler would have to survive without me, just like a real adult, maybe for the first time in his life.